obviously a meeting of the cross-party group on sustainable transport. We're starting a new project, if we can call it a project. This is all about freight, and we've got three. I think they're going to be really good and interesting speakers tonight. Here they are. They've all made the effort to come from London, so we've got to be nice to them, ask good questions, but it's going to be great. Do we have any apologies, first of all?
They'll be added to the minutes. We don't have very many.
Not many. They'll be added to the minutes. Good. That's what I like to hear. New members. So there are always people who want to join this group. So do we have someone from Sweco UK? Andrew McFarlane. Right, Andrew. You're going to tell us about Sweco UK and why you should be a member of the group. If you could press your button there.
We obviously don't design microphones at Sweco. So we're a multidisciplinary civil engineering company, and I'm working in the Sustainable Transport department for that. So we are obviously doing a lot of sustainable transport across the UK in terms of active travel, sustainability, looking at kind of multimodal transport and connectivity. So given the way the landscape is and the funding's going at the moment, then I think it'd be quite interesting to be here and hopefully feed in something useful from a consultant perspective, and especially seeing it in kind of real time and how things get done and the challenges and the constraints that we're facing. So hopefully that's something I can help contribute potentially.
Thank you very much. Everyone okay with Sweco UK joining? You're in. Right. Who's next? Light Mobility Association UK. Do we have Brendan Hill?
So I'm Brendan Hill. I'm wearing two hats. One is a personal one as a local entrepreneur looking to build small vehicles here. But that's not the reason I'm here. The reason I'm here is to represent a newly set up organisation called the Light Mobility Association of Light Vehicle Manufacturers across the UK. There are a very few in Scotland, a slightly larger number in England, but basically they've never had a representative lobby. We have the bike lobby and we have the motorbike lobby, but there's a lot of vehicles in between. There are large organisations filling this role in France, Germany and other places, so we decided one was necessary here.
What kind of vehicles are we talking about here?
The French organisations describes it as everything from shoe to car. And there is some overlap, obviously, with things like electric bikes. But basically, we feel that the whole space of vehicles in between, anything you can imagine from a milk float on downwards, is dramatically underrepresented and undersupported legislatively. And it is one of the great neglected areas in looking at transport emissions reduction. We talk about needing to reduce miles, but we could travel the same number of miles if only we travelled in much lighter vehicles.
Sounds good to me. Shall we have him in? You're in. Right, who's next? We've only got two more. SURF, Scotland's Regeneration Forum. I can't pronounce this name. Augustin van Gatten, is it? Online.
Hi,
Augustin.
Hi there. Can you hear me? I'm joining you remotely.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. So the Dutch pronunciation for those interested is Augustijn van Galen, but the anglicized version of that is Augustine. So that'll do. Hopefully for you all. So yeah, very nice to see you all. I'm Augustine, Policy and Advocacy Manager at SURF, which is Scotland's Regeneration Forum. We focus predominantly on the overall objective of addressing poverty in Scotland's most disadvantaged communities. And transport poverty is obviously a huge component of that, as I'm sure the group is sort of well established. So transport will be one of our 5 core foci rather, for our 2026 manifesto, and really looking forward to building on the work that this cross-party group has done in future with that as well, and contributing as well. So yeah, that's me.
That's you. Everyone happy with that? You're in too.
Thank you.
Good. Right. Finally, the Rail Freight Group. Martin Bignell. There he is, online, on the screen.
Good evening, everybody. Yes, let's hope you get a full house of acceptances then. Yeah, my name's Martin Bignell. I'm the Scotland and North of England rep for the Rail Freight Group. We're the representative industry trade body for the rail freight sector. Our interest is, as it says on the tin, interest in freight. Not quite so much goes on sort of very urban freight, although it's a small sector of what we do. But across the piece, obviously, it's an area of interest to grow to meet our carbon reduction targets.
Right, Martin, you sound ideal.
Thanks.
Everyone agree? Right, you're all in, all four of you. What a result. So I think with that, on that happy note, we'll get into the speakers. And which order should we do it in? I think we'll go for Oliver first. Oliver Lord, Clean Cities Campaign.
Thanks very much, Chair. So my name's Oliver. I'm the head of UK for Clean Cities Campaign. We're a Europe-wide campaign, a directed network of 145 different partners. If I can have the next slide, please, Abigail. And our mission really is to build public support for cleaner, healthier cities. And we see that as not only supporting the most sustainable forms of transport, such as walking and cycling in cities, but we're big advocates of the electrification of road transport as well, because we see that as a critical pathway towards achieving our climate goals. So we build campaigns, we do research and analysis, and this topic is of huge interest to us, and particularly the impact that freight generally is having in cities. Next slide, please, Abigail. And importantly, it's of great interest to us because of the boom in the number of miles that are now being driven on our roads owing to vans. In fact, vans used to make up about 1 in 10 miles being driven in Scotland, and now they make up about 1 in 5 miles. So we think there needs to be better policy to address this and do more around this topic. And we heard earlier, actually, from one of your new members who's saying similar things. Next slide, please, Abigail. And inevitably, that has also led to increases in carbon emissions from vans. So whilst these charts have different axes, you'll notice that cars and taxis is higher. The important thing about this slide is that light vans, carbon CO2 emissions from light vans are up 61% since 1990 and really going in the wrong direction compared to the progress we're making elsewhere. In fact, when you start to look at the progress we've made amongst the cars and taxi fleet, it's almost starting to become offset owing to the increase in the carbon emissions coming from vans. Next slide, please, Abigail. And this is partly the result of there now being an extra 1 million diesel vans on the roads in the UK since Dieselgate, which has actually just turned 10 years old as an anniversary, the scandal of Dieselgate. And that basically means we now have a record number of vans on our roads, doing a record number of miles in Scotland. Next slide, please. And it's partly, this is accumulation of impact because of the dieselisation of the fleet, more miles being driven, and there being more and more vans on the road. And when we look at the sales of electric vans, which is a very important technology to be transitioning to change this impact, we've got about 22% of all new sales of cars now being fully electric, but only about 8% of vans in the UK. And we think better policy is needed to support that. And in fact, it's not just us saying this. Earlier this year, the Climate Change Committee also reported that there needs to be much more focus on policies around supporting the uptake of zero-emission vans themselves, also saying the same thing. We're looking across Europe. We're looking at what other trends are taking place. And this slide shows you the vast increase in electric vans in the Netherlands, to the extent that 1 in 5 electric trucks sold in the European Union are now sold in the Netherlands. And then also they're looking at something close to a 74% sales of electric vans out of the entire fleet that's being sold there. So it's remarkably different to what we're seeing here in the UK. and we're asking ourselves why that is. Next slide, please, Abigail. In fact, I just ran over some of this detail, so we could probably go to the next slide, but you can peruse those charts later. Because the Dutch cities have worked with the government in the Netherlands to deliver a national climate agreement, which basically set the goal for zero emission zones for freight in cities. And that policy is now live in 18 cities across the country. And as Clean Cities campaign, we strongly believe that city level policy really drives national change, and this is a great example of that happening. So in these schemes, in effect, freight operators are now being asked to start to transition politely, as you would imagine, to zero-emission trucks and vans over a period of time. So the impact begins with only newly registered vehicles. So if they're looking to buy a new van or truck from this year and then start to use that in one of these cities, it needs to be zero-emission, in effect, battery electric. And then over time, that requirement changes so that the entire fleet would eventually need to be zero emission. And by about 2030, that's when the regulations really start to kick in. This is, of course, also coupled with some good policy at a national level around, making sure that the right tax breaks are in place that incentivize these vehicles. But importantly, even with the change of government recently in the Netherlands, this agreement has stood. And because the businesses have been working very closely with cities and the government. Next slide, please, Abigail. So I'd also point out that it's not just in the Netherlands that this sort of agreement is in place, also in Denmark and in Sweden. And we're wondering whether Copenhagen will now be the next major city to be embarking on this venture, because they, in this summer, approved a zero-emission zone of their own, starting with passenger cars, actually, but then moving on to commercial vehicles and making sure that there are certain exemptions in place for local businesses. But I think what really plays out from all this policy making over the pond is that they are giving, a lot of time in how they're developing this policy, but also giving greater certainty to businesses. And it'd be interesting to hear the perspective of the next speakers, that actually, if you can work together and set, a timeline together, then you will actually get the investment that you hope to see from fleet operators. Next slide, please. And finally, I do want to give a shout out to those light vehicles, but particularly quadricycles, and cargo bikes. And I know I'm not meant to mention London, but just very briefly to say that we published some analysis this just last month that shows London has seen a doubling in the use of cargo bikes in the last 2 years. And that's in relation to, the infrastructure that is being put in place in that city, or cycling infrastructure, for example. And it basically means it's a lot quicker these days to be doing a lot of the deliveries in the city centre. And my colleague is currently in Vilnius today, which is the European Commission's Urban Mobility Conference, and she heard from La Poste, who have got 250,000 employees, and they're talking about some of their deliveries being 40% more efficient because they're using cargo bikes in the city centre. And the sort of policy I was just talking about also helps to drive the uptake of these types of vehicles, the manufacturing of these vehicles and the investment in these vehicles as well. Next slide, please, Abigail. So it's to summarise, really, the UK Climate Change Committee have also put forward that key action to policymakers to develop policies and incentives to accelerate zero-emission van uptake because of those troubling charts I was showing you earlier. We must do more to enable more sustainable alternatives to vans and trucks in our cities, such as e-cargo bikes, quadricycles, and even porterage. I know Royal Mail are big fans of walking around with their parcels, and you'll hear from Emma. And then also, I think we must be looking to these other European cities as inspiration for what could potentially very much happen here in Scotland. And, could we see the next zero-emission freight area starting in Edinburgh or Glasgow, for example? And I'll leave it there. Thank you very much.
Oliver, thank you. So I think we'll hear from our other two speakers then, and then we can open it up to questions and comments. So next up, we've got Emma Bayliss-Chan from Royal Mail. Emma.
Thank you as well for that advice. Hi everyone, I'm Emma Bayliss-Chan, Head of Climate Strategy and Risk at Royal Mail. It's a real pleasure to be here speaking today at the first session on sustainable freight, as well as Scottish Transport CPG. First, a little bit more about Royal Mail. Next slide, please. So Royal Mail is, of course, one of the most recognisable institutions across the UK. We are the UK's universal service provider, and what that means is we have a legal obligation to deliver to every single address in the UK. That's 32 million addresses in total, including 3 million here in Scotland, both residential and commercial business addresses. Next slide, please. Zooming in closer to our reach in Scotland, we're a huge impact in the local economy. We employ 11,000 people, operate 4 mail centres, 167 delivery offices, and we also maintain 11,000 post boxes. From a vehicle fleet perspective, we operate 4,500 vehicles, including 300 electric vans. We're also very proud to have transitioned 6 of our delivery offices to operate with 100% fully electric van fleets here in Scotland. And we're so proud to serve all the communities across Scotland, from here in the heart of Holyrood all the way to the 790 islands of the mainland, the smallest being Innerholm in Orkney, which has just 1 resident. From a wider UK economy perspective, we also employ 1 in 200 people, 130,000 people across the UK. We operate one of the largest commercial vehicle fleets with 50,000 vehicles, including our trailers. This means we have both a huge scale that we can use and also a huge responsibility and opportunity when it comes to our decarbonisation journey. So the last mile, what is that for Royal Mail? Next slide, please. So the last mile is the final leg of our delivery journey, but it's also the most visible. It's what you see outside your homes every day. It's our posties and our red vans coming down the street to deliver mail to your doorstep or nearest delivery point. It's also where we have our unique advantage, what we call our feet on the street model, or portage, as I recently learnt as well, with over half of our delivery routes being delivered either entirely or purely on foot, with our network of 80,000 posties walking up to 1 billion steps a day. This, coupled with our strong pace with electric vehicle transition, means that we have the lowest average carbon emissions per parcel in the UK. But where does our last mile decarbonisation ambitions fit within our wider decarbonisation strategy at Royal Mail? Next slide, please. So we launched Steps to Zero, our ambition to achieve net zero by 2040 3 years ago. And it is focused on decarbonising not only our last mile, where we set a target to transition 100% of our delivery routes to zero emission modes by 2035. That means delivering on foot or with electric vans or other zero emission vehicle technologies. But we also need to decarbonise beyond the last mile. We've got our heavy goods vehicles, our trucks, we can't forget about them. We've also got a large and ageing estate, and we also can't forget about our value chain. But the good news is we've made really strong progress to date. We've reduced our total emissions by 25% since our baseline year of 2021. We've deployed over 7,000 electric vehicles, which makes it the largest delivery van fleet in the UK. And we've also installed over 3,000 depot-based chargers, making it the largest private depot-based charging network in the UK. This represents not only a substantial investment in EVs and charging infrastructure, but also in our people. Our delivery colleagues love their new EVs. They're much easier to drive because they have automatic transmission. They have a larger load space, which is very important as parcels keep getting bigger. And they're also wonderfully quiet. We're very proud to have trained over 22,000 people in effective charging management skills they can also apply if they transition their personal car to electric. We also operate most of our own vehicle workshops, so we've also trained over a third of our mechanics with electric van servicing skills. These are key transferable green skills that can take with them as we continue to transition to a low carbon economy. Next slide, please. Focusing on our low carbon transition for the final mile, Scotland represents a lot of unique opportunities and challenges. For us at Royal Mail, Scotland has been a real testbed for innovation. It's where we've successfully trialled drone trials for drone deliveries to the Shetland Islands, Orkney Islands, and the Hebrides. These drone deliveries have improved service reliability in areas where poor weather or challenging geography have often hampered the delivery service. With the Orkney Islands drone service, we've had over 650 successful flights, with 95% being on schedule, and goods being delivered around 24 hours faster than traditional ferry routes. We've also have e-cargo bikes in operation in Edinburgh and Glasgow, and we've even trialled hydrogen fuel cell e-cargo bikes in Aberdeen. E-cargo bikes, microelectric vehicles, the umbrella of micromobility technology is also really exciting for us at Royal Mail. We see really exciting opportunities to deploy them in both urban and rural areas. From an urban perspective, we often have very limited yard space, and we're also finding that increasingly car-free zones are being introduced. So these could be the perfect solution for those current barriers. In rural areas where there's often power limitations, the fact that most of these vehicles only need a standard 3-pin plug to be recharged rather than a full-size EV charger also offers exciting electrification opportunities. Other general challenges that have hampered our electrification journey to date have, of course, been, as I've referenced before, small sites, aging estate, limited power, but really want to work together with other operators, local authorities, and businesses and local communities to find joint solutions. Historically, from an EV deployment perspective here in Scotland, cold weather, especially with older EV models, have really hampered the battery range. But with the rapid development in battery technologies over the past few years, we are now poised to rapidly start scaling up our EV deployment here in Scotland. The new EVs we deployed this year are all equipped with heat pump technology, so they can perform better in cold weather conditions. And we've also installed rapid DC chargers at key strategic locations to allow for more efficient battery top-ups. Looking ahead, the transformation we're taking at Royal Mail is not just focused on our environmental responsibility, although it's crucially important. For us at Royal Mail, our market is rapidly evolving. Parcels volumes are surging, letter volumes are plummeting, and we have super agile competitors entering the market and gaining ground. Globalization, increasingly global marketplaces also completely transform the way we move goods globally. In order for Royal Mail to stay ahead, we know we need to be sharper, faster, more focused, and efficient. Some of the exciting innovations we've been working on recently, which you may have started to see around town, is solar-powered post boxes, offering more drop-off points for our customers to send parcels. We've also rapidly expanded our out-of-home network to over 21,000 locations where customers can drop off or pick up parcels. Not only do these out-of-home locations improve convenience for our customers, but it also reduces the carbon associated with missed deliveries. To close, Royal Mail is transforming at pace. We're investing in EVs, infrastructure, networks, our people, and innovation to decarbonize our last mile. But we can't do it alone. We want to collaborate with other operators, other businesses, local authorities, all levels of governments and local communities in order to create cleaner and smarter freight systems. In Scotland, we've always seen it as a forefront for innovation, and I believe it can lead the way when it comes to last mile decarbonisation. And Royal Mail is committed to being part of that journey. Thank you.
Okay, just before I introduce our final speaker, Emma, can you tell me what is a solar-powered postbox?
Yes, so a solar-powered postbox is a postbox that we are refurbishing to have solar panels on top, and those solar panels power a new kind of flap which you can open, which can fit up to a shoebox-sized parcel. So you can scan it, using your phone and then send it on your way rather than having to go to the post office. So hopefully on a street corner near you soon.
Clever stuff. Right. There'll be plenty of questions for you, I'm sure. Right. Our final speaker is Toby Hiles from Grid Smarter Cities. Toby.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for, it's a very interesting couple of speakers as well. So hopefully I'll continue that. Hi, my name's Toby Hiles. I'm the Sales and Partnership Director at Grid Smarter Cities. And given the challenges that have been so eruditely outlined by the previous speakers, we thought there's got to be a better way of actually providing a solution for this. So what we have developed is a curbside booking platform called Curb to allow all of the freight servicing and delivery operators who need to come into towns and cities to be able to book a space rather than having to fight and first come first served. So that's the general piece. Next slide, please. So obviously we've heard about the challenges, obviously with congestion, environment with more vans, more pollution, challenges around new infrastructure for some HGVs and LGVs where wonderfully you're putting in some cycle lanes. Sometimes that's challenging for them to deliver. So how do we do this different and better? And I think on the right-hand side of the slide there said, the commercial freight serving delivery operators functioning on a first-come, first-served basis is not a very efficient way of operating your towns and cities in this rate. So we came up with a better solution. Next slide, please. Slightly busy slide, but as you can see, we've got a two-sided digital booking platform. Think of it, if you need to, as Airbnb for curbside, where we enable the towns and cities, the local authorities, the curb owners, to operate their curbside in a more digitised and 21st century fashion, and the logistics operators on the other side of the platform, the curb users, to be able to sort of guarantee themselves, to getting to where they need to be first time and on time. And as you can see in this, as I say, in the very busy diagram, you've got the cities that will set the regulation. If you're digitising that, you allow a booking platform. Booking then allows the logistics operators to operate efficiently. You can take payment on this, so you could, if you were so minded, it would be the first time you could charge logistics operators for access to the curbside. Offsetting the challenges around penalty charge notices, etc. EV charging, Emma talked about the charging network there. We can add a booking platform over the top of an EV charging network as well, so you can pull those two pieces together, so you can enable that to become more efficient as well. And then integration with, with your cities and authorities enforcement teams as well, so you understand when there's a problem and how you can manage that in a better way as well. Next slide, please. So what do we do? So on the left-hand side is what we call a permit loading bay. So hopefully you all know what a loading bay looks like on a street corner, a bit of cut-in curbside that says loading only on it. We just digitise it, put a booking wrapper over the top of that, and you turn it into a bookable space for users. There is a virtual loading bay, which is where the signs and the lines on the streets don't change. There's no green box that we're putting in on them here. But essentially what you're doing is providing access to certain vehicles that need access to certain locations at certain times on what is normally restricted curbside. So if you think about a brewery logistics dray that's delivering loads of barrels of beer, needs to be close to the cellar door because the health and safety regulations say those guys need to be not rolling beer from a loading bay that's 300 yards up the road, or perhaps a Tesco local, etc., that has got cages, etc., needs to be, again, very close to where they need to be. So working with the authorities, we can give that vehicle permission to be at that location for that purpose, for that duration, etc. So you're enabling those vehicles to get in, do the things they need to do, and get out as quick as possible without delaying on your space and polluting, or even circling around if they can't find something. The virtual loading bay also can act as a backup if someone is in the permit loading bay when you have made a booking, and I'll talk about the process that in a second. And then we can manage access on a zonal basis as well. I think before this started, we were talking about the geofencing of micromobility bikes in city centres and not being able to use them in certain other places. We can create zones very much like with the geofence zone, or if you've got a barriered zone entry, etc., to allow, again, only those vehicles you want in there at the times that you want them in there, and doing the things that you want them to do as well. So again, it's about enabling and helping people to be compliant while also reducing the congestion and air quality issues. Next slide, please. Here's an example of what we call a chargery. So this is two loading bays that are next to each other. One has a charger, one may not have a charger. In the morning, you may have a brew logistics group vehicle going in there. If it happens to be outside a pub, they'll take up those two spaces. And then in the afternoon or lunchtime straight after, you have two delivery vehicles in there. One may be charging, the driver taking a break and getting a bit of graze charge if they need to. And the other, can be doing exactly what I think Emma was talking about. They're sitting in there and portering from that van and doing the walking freight as from there. And then in the evening, the option there where you've got the charger in there could be powering an EV taxi while the pub puts out some tables and chairs. So by enabling a booking platform to be put over your curbside, you are better managing that, and you're getting a number of different throughputs through a single space, whereas before you may struggle to have different users going through that space. We have also had deployments in London. Apologies, that's where we started our deployments out there. We've had cargo bikes as well booking in that space, even though they are, don't have a legal designation. Some operators have said actually what we want to do is, again, be as compliant as possible in our operations. Next slide, please. An example of how this works in practice. This is we've just won an award for this down at the British Parking Awards, which is the Oscars for the parking world. But appreciate it's quite niche. Appreciate it's quite niche. For the Future of Parking Award for this deployment here. So what we've got is this is a typical high street. This is in Walworth Road in the London Borough of Southwark. And we've got 5 loading bays down there, and they are also augmented with these digital smart signs which give information on the who's got the booking, when it's upcoming, where it's free next, etc. So you're given the information there as well as on the apps. The app can be there's a web app for things like Tesco. Their depot managers will book in for the vehicles, and the driver will have a version of the app as well. And if they're struggling to get there because there is some of that congestion piece, they can cancel the booking and rebook something else up to a minute before the stuff starts. So reflecting the fact that traffic challenges do cause people issues. Again, apologies for the size and busyness of the slide. You may see a red bar on the second mobile screen there. That's our rogue vehicle button, and I think I touched on it earlier when I said that if you've made a booking in your permit bay and you get there and someone else happens to be in it, you can press this rogue vehicle button and it does 2 things. One, it creates one of those virtual loading bays for you very close by, so you don't have to circle with your truck and you can go and do your delivery. And the second part of that is it pings a message off to the enforcement team that some nefarious characters left their vehicle in a space. You might want to come and enforce against that as well. So over time, you start to get layers of data, and also you can start to see where there's patterns of there's being challenges around 11 till 12 on a Tuesday. What's the challenge? You can set some targeted enforcement down there. So we've had, it's been going for just over a year now. We've had, 5,000, whatever it says there, bookings. And the important thing I think there for people is to turn around and say actually that we had some independent research carried out by Stantec, the environmental engineering consultants, who said that if you deployed curb, it could take off more CO2 out of the, Greater London area than the ULEZ charge in itself. So reduces 20 million miles 20 million kilometres of circling from all of the fleets there. And so Tesco, in this particular example, is outside a Tesco local, and they used to bring their 10-metre small urban lorry in 6 days a week. Now they've got some booking capability. They can bring their larger 13.5-metre lorry in 3 times a week. So, and they can also shut down sort of reduce the delivery window from a 4-hour one in case they had to wait further that road till the space was free to now a 2.5-hour window. So you can start to see how it helps on the operator side. And when you are thinking about it from a city perspective, you are bringing in fewer vehicles, they're in there for a shorter period of time, and you get a lot less circling as well. So I always say to my CEO, who founded this probably about 5 years ago now, he always talks about being at the bleeding edge or the cutting edge. I said, no, we're just at the cutting edge of common sense. So this is a solution that you can deploy now, rather than having to wait for a nuclear-powered space hopper to be invented in the next round of AI-generated stuff. So what we're trying to say here is, here's a practical solution about how you can help enable more efficient use of your current curbside. Thank you.
Great. I will open it up, but just something occurred to me there. In order to do this, presumably the local council has to introduce traffic regulations so nobody else can park in these bays.
Yep. So for the permit loading bays, like the one we just showed you on Woolworth Road, there will be a traffic order that gets written that says these are now permit only bays, and the way you get a permit is just for it to go on the curb platform to do that. So part of that is engagement that we do with the local businesses and their supply chains to see how and who and what with the council beforehand as well.
And so if anyone else parks there, they'll get a ticket.
If you don't have a permit, you'll get a ticket.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. I shall open it up. Those in the room, if you put your hand up. Those online, put your virtual hand up, and I will attempt to get to people. There's a lot of interest, so I'm going to start with the room, and I'll go to Sarah.
I just want to ask a question, because what's really obvious, you talked about raw mail, is just the huge diversity of all the different deliverers now. And this is all the companies choosing to do this rather than being forced to do it. So what's the incentive? Do you save money? Is it more attractive to people hiring you? What's the motivation to actually do this innovation, which is good for all of us?
Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, a lot of the motivation for Royal Mail comes from our large customers. A lot of our large customers have set really ambitious decarbonisation goals themselves, and us being their delivery partner, it means that we sit in what's called the supply chain emissions, or the Scope 3 emissions. And further down the chain for their customers, if they're environmentally sustainable business, and that's a real part of their organization, especially their B Corp, they really want to shout, we use the lowest carbon emissions per parcel delivery service in the UK. So they're appealing to also the environmentally conscious consumer in their consumer base. But having that pressure is honestly what really helps to justify the investment that we need with the board, etc. We actually work very closely with our commercial team to kind of highlight revenue, interested in environmental performance of our business, and then link that to the investment needed.
You want to come in? Yeah.
I just wanted to come in very briefly on that, because I used to work in the public sector. I actually helped to develop the ultra low emission zone in the capital. And when I was building that policy together, and I would say this at Clean Cities campaign, because based on my presentation, that actually the city policy also drives a lot of investment in the operators and motivates them to some extent. And fortunately, Emma's nodding her head, but I had fleet operators coming behind off record to me kind of saying, look, if you weren't developing this policy, making the business case internally would be a hell of a lot more difficult for me. So I'll throw it in there that actually some public policy also drives that investment as well.
Yeah, and from an operator, our customer perspective, it's more efficient and saves them money. I think if you the amount of missed deliveries that are happening via from people like the brewery logistics guys who can't get to where they need to be is increasing massively in London and other places as well. I think every single time they have a missed delivery and they have to take the beer back to the depot, it costs them over £500, a journey, right? So I know some people seem to think that perhaps a lot of these goods that we're all helping deliver just circling around waiting until someone's calling, but it's only there because somebody's asking for it. So again, we've seen as I say, the example I gave from Tesco, the efficiencies they've been able to deliver through that space and the beer, etc. So not only that, and then as the transition to electric vehicles as well, it's the total cost of ownership and business is a lot cheaper for them as well. So it's not just about policy driving that, but you have to have the policy set there to help enable them.
Okay, thank you. When I call you, if you can say who you are and where you're from. So that was Sarah Boyack, she's an MSP from this area. Right, so I'm going to go online next. I'll introduce you, Dave, because people can see your name. Dave Defoe from Spokes, which is an Edinburgh-based cycle organisation.
Well, Edinburgh and Lothians, actually. However, I've got questions for the first two speakers. For Oliver, I was very interested to see about the doubling of cargo bike use in London. Could you tell me what base that doubling is from, and is it now, relatively significant total? And also, could you explain what you think has led to the increase? You mentioned infrastructure, but are there other factors? And in particular, have there been any incentives to businesses by the local authorities or any other agencies? And then a Royal Mail question. I think you mentioned there'd been some sort of cargo bike trial in Edinburgh. And if you'd just tell us a little bit more about that. Thank you.
Great question. Thanks, Dave. On London's cargo bike uptake, the base is quite low. I haven't got the numbers to hand, but I'd love to email you and have a further conversation about that. I think obviously the point I want to make is how the momentum is increasing vastly. But we're talking tens of thousands of trips, I think, in a year. So, we relate that to the overall kilometres being driven by vans in London. That's, still very small. And some of that will also include some families as well, because actually 25% of the morning peak traffic in London is based around the school run. And we think cargo bikes is also a good alternative for people to take their kids to school. But Transport for London thinks 17% of van kilometres in London could be transferred to cargo bike, and it is the cycling infrastructure that will have helped with this, because they can cut through the traffic a lot more easier and quicker and more reliably, I hasten to add, and that's obviously a really big motivator for freight operators. And then there have been some schemes underway. There's actually a network called the Zero Emission Network that the Mayor funded between several local authorities, and they gave out grants to local businesses to not only trial the vehicles first, but then also get some money off to purchase them as well. So, all that comes together to then, build that momentum, plus things like the congestion charge, which just makes it more difficult, more expensive, to be driving a vehicle into the centre of the city.
Thanks. And for Royal Mail, we have one e-cargo bike operating here, what we call our Deldio, but I think it goes by maybe a different name up here. And it was actually a site that was chosen during the initial deployment of our first, I think it was only 10 microelectric vehicles in 2021. But we're very excited to hopefully doing a larger scale trial early next year. And we have a couple other places in Scotland shortlisted. I can't remember them all off the top of my head, but I know the Isles of Scilly is one of them. If there's anything more, I'll let you know as well, Dave. Thank you.
Is that one bike in Scotland you've got?
We only have 10 in the UK overall currently, but we're expanding to 150. So you're very fortunate to even have one. Actually, we have a high density in Scotland, which is very great. But we're doing our first large scale trial. And to expand on why we've taken a while to get to expanding microelectric vehicles further. Being a legacy operator, the number one priority for us is being able to deliver our mail on time 6 days a week. And we need a robust service and maintenance network for that. And a lot of the e-cargo bike manufacturers and microelectric vehicles are really exciting startups, but it means they often don't have those full servicing networks available. But what's great is that the industry has really developed. We now feel like the time is right. We've got the infrastructure and the servicing and maintenance capabilities now available in the UK, where we feel confident enough to start expanding and trialing these vehicles at scale. Thanks.
Okay, back in the room. You had your hand up, didn't you? Say who you are, where you're from.
Oh, leave it. Sorry. Ian Budd, Friends of the Far North Line, beg your pardon. Enjoyed Emma's introduction to how much you're electrifying the things, all the local journeys. Apologies if this is maybe an unfair question and slightly off topic, but until a couple of years ago, all the long-haul trunk mail was on the railway, and you had a fleet of electric trains that carried it. They've now been scrapped, and you've gone back to diesel lorries on the roads. So the question is, as part of your general move towards electrification of all your services, are you planning in the future to go back to using the railways? Because even if you have electric lorries, the railway is a far more economic way to transport large quantities all at once.
Yeah, so our decision to move away from rail, me working in the environment team, of course, that wouldn't have been my preference, but it came down to the economics. It was just too expensive at that point in time. Our electric trains have reached the end of life. I think they've been in operation for 43 years, and we're starting to have real issues with service reliability, the train breaking down, not being able to find the parts, and vice versa. And when we tried to secure new freight routes, etc., with operators like Deutsche Bahn, etc., we couldn't find them at the right schedule that we needed and at the right price. So if anyone can come to me and help me reopen up those rail freight routes, I'd be very happy to work together with you. But yeah, for us, it came down to an economic thing where we're moving it with trucks rather than by rail. We also have made efforts to decarbonize our truck fleet in the meantime. We've deployed a low carbon biofuel in our middle mile fleet, and we are also going to bring in our first 8 electric 40-ton trucks later this month through the ZHID Innovate UK funded program. But yeah, I definitely think rail will ultimately be part of an operator's transport mix in the future, but we really need to make it more accessible for freight operators like ourselves to make it an economically viable solution for our operations. Thanks.
I'm just going to bring in Martin, our new member Martin from the Rail Freight Group, who had his hand up. So Martin.
Thanks, Ian. Yes, that was maybe a slightly unfair question. I wasn't going to ask it, given the focus of urban logistics here, but fair point. Just to say, Emma, let's get in touch and see if we can find some other opportunities for you. As you probably know, there's a number of operators that are starting to enter the small parcels market, and they're desperately keen to find customers to fill their trains so they can be viable. So there must be something in there. But while I've got the floor, if you don't mind, Chair, I've got a couple of questions or observations, really. I think, and it does relate to trains. Obviously, trains are very good at consolidating a lot of volume into one movement, and the Royal Mail, or the old Royal Mail train, was a good example of that. That's now moved to a larger number of trucks for the same volume of freight. And I think what the presentation about vans and the Smarter City presentation really highlighted this, is that I guess over a number of years we've started to demonize trucks in our urban centres, and what that has had the effect of is moving what was consolidated volume into more smaller vehicles, which is why you may be seeing a proliferation of vans. And I just wondered, as we sort of look to vans as now being a bit of a problem, and maybe cycle couriers being the solution to that, is that going to lead to a situation where we'll suddenly have a proliferation of bicycles and people moving freight and even smaller vehicles, because we've lost that consolidation effect? It's just an observation of whether that's a bit of a trend. I think a second one is, what are those vans doing? Are these domestic parcels to households, or are these store deliveries? I think there's a need to sort of understand the differentiation between that. And in terms of the Tesco example, I thought that was really, really good. The ability to have an operator move to a larger vehicle that's delivering less frequently. On the one hand, it's a big vehicle in the city centre. On the other hand, it sounds to me as though that's actually partly solving the problem we're trying to solve as well. So just some observations, I think.
Anyone want to pick those up, or shall we just leave them as observations from Martin? We're going to leave them as observations, Martin. Thank you.
Okay.
And now, Chris Thompson, you actually had your hand up online first, so I did see you. So if you want to come in now, online.
I did, but I'm a patient soul, so thank you, Chair. Chris Thompson from Living Streets Scotland, the national charity for walking. And just following on, actually, it was nice that Martin there was talking about consolidated deliveries, because that was the way I was going to come into this. Obviously, from a walking charity perspective, we're looking at the last mile, maybe the other way around. And I would like to put this to any of the speakers this evening, and thank you. They were very interesting presentations. Where do you see the functioning of deliveries to a node? I mean, I could give an example to follow on from the rail freight thing of where we used to have Red Star parcels and then collected from the station. But the point being that there is a part to play coming the other way, where there is a benefit both to those receiving goods to go and get the things they want at the time they want, and there is a reduction in these number of very small micro deliveries, if you like, that run out the last mile. Can I just put that one to anyone who's interested to follow back?
Chris, you're really showing your age there, mate. Talking about Red Star parcels.
Thank you. I wear it well.
Even I remember those. Right. Anyone want to pick that up?
I'll have a go first. So yeah, consolidation, no deliveries. I think for Royal Mail, we're quite unique in that that's an approach we almost already take within our operation. We sort mail. It's ingested into our network, usually at a parcel hub or mail center. Then it gets sorted, and then it goes to our local node before it's delivered, which is our local delivery office. And then from there, it's either delivered to the doorstep. But now, with our expanding out-of-home network, we see opportunities to deliver to other areas, so collection points for those parcels to be picked up. But I definitely think there is room and more opportunities for consolidation. When we've been approached for them before, often they haven't been as compelling as they might be to other operators who don't have such a dense presence like we do. But we definitely are open to potential consolidation opportunities as well, because we already visit every doorstep across the UK. So it makes a lot of sense if there's opportunities for consolidation, if we can also support that in any way, reduce the number of vans going down the road per day, delivering to the same address. We'd be more than happy to help find joint solutions for that.
Yeah, I think from our perspective, we're seeing a lot of, in the example that I showed on my slide, there was apologies, Emma, there was a DPD van there. So they are parking up there for longer and walking and stuff from there. So they're moving it once. So kind of like a mobile node, for want of a better phrase there. And there's also and there's an Amazon chap who uses it as well, right? So they do that where it's densely, possible for them to operate and do that. So I think where you've got that ability to be able to have, mobile nodes, also within our spaces as well, you can, sort of cross dock. We did some cross docking from road and river down on the Thames, where we provided the landside space for parcels that were coming off the Thames to come onto cargo bikes to disappear off into the city. So you can do that, or you could use one of our permit bays. You could book it with a larger vehicle, and they could offload it onto cargo bikes. So you've got that sort of node where there isn't the land potentially for somewhere, or it's not making economic sense to have a space to do some of that sorting facility in the centre of town somewhere. So you can actually start to make them slightly more mobile, but also give them some certainty about where they're going to be.
I'll take the opportunity to speak, just not representing corporate interests, and maybe say there's an element here of like trying to get corporations to kind of work together really closely and disclose the way they work and their ways of working is very difficult. And we've talked about consolidation hubs for several years, and I hope we'll continue to talk about them for several years as well. But again, going back to some of my, main point in my presentation is that public policy will be a driver here if we truly want consolidation to happen, and that will include, for example, access restrictions at certain times into city centres, and you almost, getting the operators to talk to each other and consolidate more. And some of the operators also are doing micro consolidation themselves in a way, like the Tesco example. Obviously, they're just delivering to that one shop, but they'll bring in a bigger vehicle into city centre, and then they'll all just walk. They'll have a network of people walking from that vehicle. So it's one to watch. I think you make a really good point around, home deliveries. I think that's another area we really need to look into a lot more. I kind of feel like if you take the analogy of the plastic bag tax, where we ask people, you've got to pay an extra 10p for your plastic bag, and whoa, use of plastic bags have plummeted. And I kind of think that sort of nudge technique, if we had some sort of additional cost on the home delivery, but making sure the incentives and nodes are there for you to come collect your delivery at certain times, and solar power letterboxes and all that sort of stuff, I think that could work quite nicely, because I think there is a little bit of consumer behaviour that we need to shape to some extent, and there are ways to do that gently.
Except you might be housebound, and that would be unfair. And I think, and this is speaking personally, the ability to go to a locker is sometimes more convenient than actually waiting in for all mail to come and then take your parcel away when you're not in. So yeah, we've got to look. It depends who the customer is, I guess.
I would agree with that, and I think it also maybe comes down to whether you need it the very next day, or you might pay a bit more of a premium for that, or you consolidate within the week.
Okay, we'll come back into the room. Yes, this young lady down here, you had your hand up quite a while ago. Tell us who you are.
Right. Thanks, convener, and thanks for very interesting presentations from everybody. Alison Cosgrove, Rail Future. Just looking for a bit of clarification on the presentations. Toby, I was a bit stunned by yours. The idea of renting out the curbside would never have occurred to me. One issue you did mention was taxis. I mean, presumably there's an extra cost into this, and taxis are very often operated by a single owner driver. What's this going to do, building in extra overheads for them? Have you had much hostility from that level of the trade, as opposed to a big operation like Tesco? And my other question was for Oliver. How relevant are electric vans to huge areas of Scotland, which, as Lucy mentioned, can be very affected by the cold? Thousands of square miles in the Highlands, the Islands, the Borders, Dumfries and Galloway. We do have cities, of course, but they're all sort of in the middle, apart from Aberdeen. So is everyone else to be excluded?
Shall I take that one first? So the example there was where happened to be an electric taxi was using a charger. So it's about access to the charger. So we're not suggesting that they pay for access to their curbside, but if you're accessing a charger and you want to reserve the charger at the same time as you're reserving the curb space, that's what it is. So it was more about just showcasing the ability for them to, the flexibility in the stuff that's moving the curbside use throughout the day. It wasn't a question of for taxis to be charged for accessing the curbside. Who knows, when digital traffic regulation orders come in and we're a bit further down the line and there's a different tax regime on vehicles rather than VED, perhaps there might be for every single time somebody does touch the curbside, there's a charge for, as the local authorities have to update that and maintain that asset. So maybe they might want to get a little piece back for it, but that's a bit further into the future.
Yeah, I mean, I would love everyone to benefit from electric vans tomorrow. I think, you know, there are challenges still with some of the range of these vehicles in order to do those sort of long mile journeys in rural areas, which Emma talked about. And the reason I'm championing city level change, because I think that can happen very quickly with the products on the market today, and we can solve some of the challenges there whilst we wait for the products to improve for rural areas. And we hear from operators who are trialling the vehicles at the minute. But I I sincerely don't want to see it as though we're excluding the rural areas, just kind of thinking about where we can act today and how we can act tomorrow once the technology changes.
Okay, I'll stick to the room. Right, who had? Right, my friend at the back, who I met at the theatre, you.
Oh, yes. Did you enjoy the show?
I did.
Good. I'll need to borrow
Right, you come to the mic.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you to all the presenters. Really interesting presentations. I think my question is possibly more relevant for our first presenter, but I think all of you can probably touch on this.
You need to say who you are as well.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, Aaron McHale. I'm an independent member, and now I also go to the theatre and meet the chair at the theatre sometimes. Yeah, the question really, I was thinking about, it was really interesting, the first presentation, the international angle and looking at, cities in the Netherlands and policies and things like that. And I wonder, often some of the policies can live or die based on public perceptions and how they're communicated. And so I wonder if there's anything we can learn from how policies like these have been applied in other countries, and if there's any lessons we can learn that, that we can look at here in Scotland. Thank you.
Probably one for you, Oliver.
It's a really good point. The fact that the government, the businesses and the city regions were working together on the policy framework, the fact that it took a period of time in order to introduce it, and they were able to communicate those changes and get all the way down to some of the smallest businesses who are often more difficult to reach, through traditional methods and city authorities. I think all I can say is really, you're absolutely right that there needs to be a complete comprehensive communication package to go with policies like this, because otherwise you just end up talking to yourselves and you're not actually getting through to the businesses, because quite often some of them will only learn about these policies 6 months out, and that's kind of when you need to be engaging the most. So I think there are some good examples from the way that, for example, the ultra-low emission zone in London was put out in its initial phases, over time, and how they communicated that. But I think I don't have a great deal more to add to that, but I'm going to look into it and maybe we can be in touch.
Okay. Is Ian Wainwright still there online? He had a hand up. Has he disappeared? No, maybe got... No, he's away. Richard, online.
Hi there, thank you, Chair. Richard Gale from Highland Council, Councillor for Ward 4 East Sutherland and Edgerton. It's just a question regarding the post office. I'm slightly off topic, I'm afraid to say, but back in the distant past, there used to be a fantastic post bus service that ran around the Highlands, and particularly in Sutherland, and it was really well used, well respected, and it actually reduced carbon footprint massively because it reduced the amount of cars that would be on the road, and it took people from all over Sutherland in to meet the trains, etc. And these vehicles are still travelling across the Highlands at the moment. Is there any possibility, if we're looking at sustainable transport, that this kind of service could be reintroduced? Because to me, it makes perfect sense. Thank you.
That's one for Royal Mail. Post bus.
I'll be perfectly honest, it's my first time hearing about the post bus service, but I will follow up with my colleagues who have a bit more experience in the organisation. My accent gives it away, but I'm from Australia, so I'm more familiar with the legacy operations of Australia Post. But that definitely sounds like an interesting premise. I think a lot of innovation when it comes to the last mile sustainability space and sustainability in general is just looking back at what we did in the past. Think about, milk deliveries in a reusable glass container that was refilled. That is the most sustainable option. We need to go back and revise and have a look at that. What was wrong with those in the past? Are they actually the most sustainable option? Does it make more sense to do that. So I'll definitely look into that bus service.
You should have a look at that. Delivers people and parcels.
People and parcels sounds like a very that's a great tagline.
Isn't
we could
it?
sell that.
Right, you can have that for free. Right, lady at the back there. If you come to a mic and tell us who you are.
Okay, hello. This is Emine Akkun from here at Watt University, together with my other colleagues. So my question is, yes, I completely agree. Public policy should address urban last mile deliveries. But how is it going to happen? In your ideal world, what needs to be done? Who are the stakeholders? How do we define last mile? So, because if you look at local transport strategies, national transport strategies, or regional transport strategies produced by organizations like Sestran, Tactran, Nestran. So what's the kind of agenda should be way forward? Thank you. And who are the stakeholders, most importantly? And how are we going to characterize the urban, what's being carried on an urban level?
I could write a thesis on that, maybe, but I think, I will look to the Netherlands as a good example here. Like I mentioned, they set the climate agreement in place in 2019, where they, effectively enabled the city municipal authorities to define the size of the zero-emission freight area, to define who gets exempt from these schemes, how it works, what type of vehicles, standards they're going to set at certain times. So I think it can be done. We could introduce any type of policy we want, right, in a way, the way that London did the Low Emission Zone, it became National Clean Air Zone framework. So I think what it needs is a bit more energy and ambition, perhaps, from some of the local leaders, which I believe is there. It's just actually championing that and actually getting the right people around the table, such as today's meeting, which is why I wanted, I was so keen to come today, because this is such a great group of people who want to talk about this. Start talking about some of the practicalities, and most importantly, communicating the timeline for when this might actually happen, because you can't do it overnight. But like I say, the technology is there, the ambition is there amongst a lot of the business operators, and, I think it can actually happen. So I'm sorry that's a bit more of a vague answer to what you're asking, but maybe we can have a little chat after the meeting as well.
Okay, Ian Wainwright, you've reappeared. You disappeared.
Sorry about that.
No problem. You're on.
Yeah. Good.
And if you say where you're from as well.
Yeah, I'm an independent consultant. I've worked both in the industry and in the public sector, but I'm here as the chair of the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport's Freight and Logistics Policy Group. So that's a bit of a mouthful. There's a lot of good points that have been made, and I think a couple of things to add, really. There's something about understanding the difference of each street, each location, because the middle of Edinburgh is a different solution to a residential suburb or a rural hamlet. These places need different solutions potentially, and I think there's a better need for people in the policy sector certainly to try and understand some of the issues about the industry, because retailers, businesses are wanting free delivery. We want free delivery, but it's a commercial service. And the cost against the service level is incredibly important, as been sort of mentioned before. Things like servicing that doesn't get talked about, but is critical for businesses to actually, make sure that they can make money. There's the things about how we integrate people and goods movement, I think, is important, so that where the design of new buildings, new street works, whatever, we actually plan for freight so that the people have the accessibility, the pavements aren't blocked, they're there at different times of day. So the regulations, the traffic regulations on the street are incredibly important. So there's a number of different elements that are potentially within the public sphere. And final point to make is there's a lot of activity in the industry to try and move towards sustainable fuels, usually electric, but it's very extortionate sort of start point. You buy a new vehicle, it's very expensive, and it's slowing down that transition. So anything that could be done to help push that would be really useful.
Colin.
Colin Howden from Transform Scotland. Unfortunately, we don't have any representatives from the government or Transport Scotland here, which is a shame because it would have been great to hear these excellent presentations. The government is, however, working on a new climate change plan at the moment. I went to a session held in Glasgow a fortnight back, and this sort of material wasn't discussed at all. There was discussion about modal shift to the more sustainable modes, but it was more longer distance stuff. So I think it would be useful for some of this material to be got to the government in some way, because I'm not persuaded they're necessarily considering this. I could be wrong, but no harm.
You're probably not wrong. Right. Okay, we've got about 20 minutes left because we started a little bit later. So I'm keen to get everyone in. So short and sweet. I'll go online and then back in the room. Chris D.
Hello, can you hear me?
Chris Day, in fact.
Yes. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you, but we can't see you.
No, that's because I've got my camera off. For whoever feels as though they're the most appropriate person to deal with this, I feel the one thing that's missing here, interesting as the presentations have been, is the whole thing about enforcement, particularly in cities and towns, and basically where you have any kind of bay or even double parking, even though it's illegal in Scotland. It's not quite like the Wild West in Edinburgh, but there's just so much pressure on it. And I wondered if the panel could say something about how they see enforcement being resolved in the medium to long term.
No, thank you, Chris. It's a good question. I think it's the conversation we have with all of our authorities that want to operate. We're currently in 6 authorities in London, and we've been discussion, funnily enough, with Edinburgh as well. And they do have different back office enforcement contractor contracts, and also with those people, the civil enforcement officers walking the streets. So there's a lot of contractual pieces in there. But again, our platform integrates with all of the back office environments. So if a local authority were to want to put in some bays and have them enforced properly, that's fine. I talked in my presentation about the fact that when somebody is in the bay or overstaying, we have an alternative for them. And also the enforcement officers are made aware. There are also more enforcement solutions that are coming down the line. Some of them are already deployed with cars that are driving past. Some cities are creating red routes where you can enforce under moving traffic orders, i.e. by CCTV. So again, there's a number of options, but I appreciate none of them is going to be the sort of the golden bullet at this point. But I think as Oliver picked up on, and also Emma as well, right? We're moving forward, and I think that's probably better than trying to wait for something that's going to be the ultimate solution.
Okay, thank you. Was somebody else in the room? Yes. Hang on. There's a chap at the back there. No. Yes.
Hello, so Jingjun Li. So I'm an assistant professor in transport planning at Water University. So actually, the presentation we hear today, we hear a lot about technology, but my background, so I used to live in Netherlands and Belgium for more than 5 years or 6 years, and I completely agree with what they are trying to do, mobility innovation in the Netherlands. But then from a research perspective, what we usually realize is that the technology is not something that could solve everything, right? For instance, in Norway, they are doing a very strong encouragement about the electric vehicle. But then people think like, if you just use electric vehicle, you can solve everything, and then we can reach the decarbonization. But what people eventually found was that people use more electric vehicle. So it's like for a transportation system that is like a social technical system. It has engineering practice, but it also has technology perspective. So my question is mainly about how do you make the trade-off between the people's behavior shifting in your organization compared to the technology? Because we hear so much about the technology, but my concern is that probably after 20 years, the freight sector will have the same concern as the mobility sector. They will realize that, wow, so if we just shift into electric van, it will be not working so well. It's more about shifting people's delivery preferences or shifting people's behavior. So have you do anything in your organization about this part of the perspective, and which is more priority for you? It's about technology or it's about shifting people's behavior? That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm happy to take this one first. So that's a really, really great point. Yeah, you can't just fully electrify everything. You won't have the greatest decarbonisation achievement if you do that. And for us at Royal Mail, we also see a huge opportunity when it comes to efficiency, because it not only drives cost savings, but it also results in results in less fuel usage. So how we're doing that is we've deployed a technology that helps us to ensure that we load vehicles to maximum capacity rather than having the load space filled with empty air. And that means we're doing less trips, more efficient trips. We're also looking at rolling out better telematics to drive more data-driven analytics when it comes to our routing, and making sure we have the right vehicle type for the right street, as somebody referenced earlier. We're also really rapidly expanding our out-of-home delivery network. So I think we now have 3,000 lockers available across the UK. So that's building on the changing the consumer's behaviour piece. We also just yesterday announced that we have bought a 49% stake in a business called Collect Plus. And what that will do is transform, I think it's like 8,000 convenience stores across the UK to be local pickup points. So if you can't make it to your delivery office before 5:30, you can now go to your local convenience store to pick up your parcel after hours. So that's trying to change the consumer behavior to be able to pick up their parcel on the first time, rather than our postie coming to their door, they're not home, missed delivery, we have to go out again. And that means more efficient deliveries, less carbon, but also changing it from a systematic point of view. Thank you.
Right, good question, really good. Did you say you're a professor? Assistant professor. How old are you? Yeah, you look. Yeah, you look very young. It's a compliment. Early 30. Incredible. Listen, I wish I'd aged as well as you have. Right, Andrew, you had your hand up.
Hello again. Yeah, this is probably a question for any of the three speakers, but it's more about I suppose the energy behind the actual fueling of the vehicles themselves, and there's a lot of talk about EV charging points. Has kinetic energy been considered for charging at all? You know, for example, Royal Mail, if there's a depot there with a huge footfall of traffic coming in and out, that would seem like a good use of kinetic energy pads and creating that. And similarly with the parking loads there, the parking bays, you know, if there's a high volume of traffic going onto these parking bays, and that would be a good, seem like a good use of energy. I appreciate there'll be costs around maintenance and adoption and that sort of stuff, but I'm just wondering if anybody had experience of that and what those experiences were.
Haven't come across kinetic energy so far in the business, but I'll definitely pass it on to my fleet colleagues. Thanks.
She's got post buses and kinetic energy to look at. Right.
Graham, lots of us probably don't know what kinetic energy is.
Well,
could somebody tell us?
That's very true. Good point. What is it?
I mean, it's as crude as basically when the pad or the pressure is applied, then that creates a circuit. You know, so the circuit closes, that creates an electric current that would then fuel into a battery or to a system. Now, I mean, it can be used in very crude formats, but it's essentially pressure's applied, that closes a circuit that then feeds into a system or a battery for energy. So, I mean, the trial, they actually use them in Tokyo and train stations across the city there, where you've got a huge footfall of pedestrians. Same with football stadiums and gigs, where there's a huge footfall of human traffic. We'll use that there to create energy. So, To me, it seems like a waste of. It's not done here. The product exists, but it's not used, and it seems like an underutilisation of it, to be honest.
Great idea. Right, we've really got to crack on here. Right, Keith online, Keith Fiskin.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. Keith Fiskin from the South East of Scotland Transport Partnership. I'm the Senior Partnership Manager there. Also, I know my research colleague, Dr. Jonathan Cowie from Edinburgh Napier University is also on the call. So I just wanted to highlight a couple of things. Chair, quite happy to engage on the post-bus discussion with Royal Mail colleagues. My partnership Regional Transport Partnership to the north, done some work on this. We could probably answer a lot of the questions as to why that is going to be challenging to reinstate. On the research side of things, we've done a lot of work on first, last, only mile sustainable logistics. Jonathan and myself developed a framework for business models as part of a previous European project, certainly shared and worked with Royal Mail colleagues, DPD, on that in the past. We've also done further appraisal work looking at in our region as to how these business models could be taken forward at scale. And again, working with a number of operators, looking at flows, looking at the infrastructure that we have and the infrastructure we need to make this happen. Again, more than happy to share that research. Just to Harriet Watt colleagues, Phil Greening is more than aware of all of this. So our regional transport strategy highlights first, last mile and sustainable logistics quite clearly with a number of policies and actions. So it is embedded in there, and increasingly our 8 local authorities across the southeast of Scotland are embedding this sort of thinking and policy development into their local transport strategies and where they exist, and local development plans as they're emerging. So yeah, absolutely happy to engage with all of this, but it is improving and the progress has been made from the policy perspective. Transport Scotland are aware of this, Network Rail are engaging on it. So yeah, the conversations are happening. So there is light at the end of the first only last mile tunnel. So, and also, as I said, happy to share any and all of our research with anyone that might be interested, and feel free to contact me. I can either put my email in the chat, or you can find us on our website, cestran.gov.uk.
Yeah, okay. If you just put your email in, or we can share it afterwards, or both, and then people can get in contact. Right. Who do we have next? Brendan, you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you. Light Mobility Association. Just 2 quick points. One on the place of cargo bikes, which in my mind involve a lot more of the bigger vehicles than you're probably thinking of, 3- and 4-wheeled ones. We really are pootling about in the foothills in the UK on this. London has increased from, I think, 9,000 to 15,000 cargo bikes in 2 years, which is absolutely fantastic, 100 and something % increase. Copenhagen, just a little larger, and I'm sorry these figures are not directly comparable, has approximately 40,000 privately owned cargo bikes. In Edinburgh, there's a few hundred. So at least 2 orders of magnitude behind. And we're talking about dramatic change in emissions. We're playing around in the foothills. Similarly with bike parking. The biggest bike park in the world, I think, is it Groningen or Utrecht? 30,000 spaces. I walked through the Utrecht one, and it's jaw-dropping. It's bigger than almost any car park in this city. If you had one like this at Edinburgh, we'd be talking about 10,000. At Waverley, we'd be talking about 10,000 parking spaces for bikes. So unless there's a real shift in leaders and investment and so on, these things are not going to happen. My professional expertise is mostly actually in behaviour and culture change. There needs to be a step change, which I don't see many signs of happening, because leaders are very often fearful of objections and of people creating a fuss, when in fact the surveys say they're almost always a minority. People want change. On the behaviour change front, there is no better behaviour change intervention than a bollard. This isn't about consultation. We know what people want. We know what we need to do. It's already happening in many, many Northern European cities. I go to Holland 3 times or more a year. we've got to start doing what they're doing. There are no secrets. I agree. It's not about technology. This is about political decisions, by and large, and investment decisions. Just one example. We've got a great big new shopping centre there. In certain European cities, they've taken over a whole floor of a multi-storey car park as a multimodal interchange node for freight, mostly cargo bikes. Trucks coming in there and distributing into smaller, the roll cages go off the lorry onto the bike. So we know exactly what needs to happen. It's political courage we need. Thanks.
Okay. Oliver, do you want to respond to that? And then I'll take one more question.
I'll just say I agree with almost all of that, except for I think consultation is a bit more necessary than maybe you're making out. But on the cargo bike thing, I think that is also an industrial opportunity that you're making out here as well. And it's really great to hear about your association, because we could really lean into that in the UK. And I had another point, but I've forgotten it actually, so I'll have to move on.
No problem. Anyone want to be the last commenter or questioner? No, we've run out. Okay. Well, look, I thought it was fantastic. Really, really interesting. Great presentations. Thank you for coming up from London, all three of you. You've just remembered what the point was. Do you want to make the point?
I would love to make the point.